in all ignorance, that I'm not a good enough physicist or mathematician to be able to, as it were, conceive of alternative arrangements of subatomic particles and so forth. But I'd like to leapfrog backwards a little bit. And it raises a question which I think you wanted to ask, and we can ask it between ourselves. The notion of gift presupposes intention. And one of the things which I find, as someone trained in biology, and I think that Richard Dawkins would say this as well, and certainly Daniel Dennett does, that intentions and so forth don't start to appear in the universe until there are entities which have what Dennett would call interests, maintaining themselves. And these don't start to occur until very, very late in the history of the universe. And I think that it's really putting the cart before the horse to start invoking intentions on the part of this maker, this gift giver, when intending and having purpose seems to be something which occurs only when you get biological systems which have interests, for which there are purposes of self-maintenance and survival.
Sure. I'm not sure in what way I'd want to get the word purpose in here. I mean, I know there are questions about scientific explanation and how far it does or does not involve purposive concepts. I mean, some read evolutionary theory itself in a quasi-purposive fashion, though Dawkins won't. I think an aesthetic account of what's going on here is better than a purposive one, where what one means by purpose is, well, doing things as means towards certain ends, which are the intentions in question. It's much more to do with, when you ask, well, why does the world exist? It's much more like asking, well, why did Mozart write The Marriage of Figaro? Well, there's a quick answer, and he needed money fast. But a much better answer is because it was just a wonderful exercise of his own creative powers in which there was great joy. And it was a great joy, as it were, to those who performed it and then those who listened to it. So the thing is justified simply in terms of its inherent beauty. Now, I think that does connect with gifts, which, of course, etymologically is connected with the word gratuitous. You're not talking about a purpose for which it exists. It exists simply because that sort of thing is beautiful. Now, to say of a thing that is beautiful is to say why it exists. If you ask, well, why beautiful things, then I think you've already misunderstood what beauty means.
I still felt that I was in the dark, and I simply couldn't understand how it could be that the creation was said to be a performance on God's part, carried out for aesthetic reasons, or how this form of Christianity could become a faith that you could practice in church without it being so simplified that it would become, in Dennis's own words, idolatrous. Well, all right, let me accept your claim as you express it.
Sure.
And really press you to say, in what sense, A, is this a Christian theology? And what does it mean, as it were, on Sunday? How does it construct your, as it were, worship? In what sense do you, outside the daily practices of your life, in those parts of your life which you regard as your religious experiences and your religious actions and religious feelings, what does it do? To whom, for example? To what are prayers directed, or are there such things as prayers in this, by your own admission, attenuated form of non-idolatrous religion?
Well, I mean, quite often I suppose that when I think I'm praying, I am simply talking to myself, a kind of inner dialogue and so on. But there are times when one seems utterly at one's wit's end, and it seems clear that, you are utterly at the mercy of something bigger than you are. I mean, when you're at your wit's end, you're not very big. And it's not hard to find something bigger than you are when you're absolutely at the end of your wits.
But even when you're within your wits, you're constantly, unless you're merely, as it were, going about your business, and therefore you're distracted from the largeness of things. What is it that makes the difference between merely saying, what a beautiful sunset, what a vast universe, why am I conscious of anything? How does it differ from those sort of bewilderments and amazements that we all have?
Yes, I mean, I don't really think it does all that much. I mean, if you're looking at it from the point of view of the experienced feel of it, I don't see that there's any difference at all. I just think that sometimes giving it a name can make all the difference in the world.
But then, for the pious atheist, which I would think of myself as, pious in the sense that I have episodes of piety. They're not episodes of piety in which I am bewildered and find myself asking the question of why it is at all, but find myself shaken to the depths of my being that there is anything at all, and by the strange mysteries of the fact that my scrambled egg in the morning is me by the end of the day. Something as negligible as scrambled egg can become something as part of something as considerable as me, or considerable as anyone. Now, that seems to me to be the most mysterious form of incarnation, much, much grander than what happened in Bethlehem. Now, why do we have to go back to Bethlehem in order to worship the extraordinary majesty of there being anything at all, even without having to invoke an author for it?
Well, you see, I'm not sure that I would actually succeed in getting a merely philosophical argument going, which demonstrated that this fact that there is anything at all is in the way of being a gift of a loving God. I think that would have to be revealed.
Yes.
To be believed. If only for the reason that there's so much counter-evidence.
Yes. Well, then in that case I want to ask you the question, for the religious person, in what way and in what manner and what episodes of revelation bring it to your consciousness?
Everything. It's either everything, you see, or simply not true. It couldn't be in just some things. It would have to be that creation is like that. Yeah. And therefore everything has to be brought into the story in some way or other. That is to say, I wouldn't be selective about it. I wouldn't want to go down a line in which I said, well, this reveals God, but of course that doesn't. As if you could explain some things in these terms, but other things didn't fit with it. Because it seems to me that's intellectually dishonest. It's got to be the lot. I mean, you've either got to accept that everything in some way or other reveals God, including failure. And that is the most surprising thought, which is why the central part of the Christian story has to do with the way in which failure works within this. If it weren't the case that everything could be included in the picture of what reveals God, including catastrophic failure, the failure of love, the mystery that if you do love, as Herbert McCabe once put it, if you don't love, you're scarcely alive, but if you do love, you'll almost certainly be killed. That's the story of Jesus, it seems to me. Now, that is a totally inclusive story. That is to say, it says, look, the whole lot, everything about it, is in some way or other a revelation of this mystery of love. It's either the case that everything does, or else your position is correct. That none of it needs to. You can look at it in a different kind of way, and you don't need this story at all.
Yeah, for me it is merely the revelation of itself.
Yeah. But you see, I don't think there's any rational argument which would settle the question between you and me. I mean, I think it is a question of faith, and whether one can accept it or not at this point. And it seems to me that one is talking about faith precisely at the point where one has gone that step beyond the point where you can have a properly speaking philosophical argument about it. So when you ask me about, well, the content of my belief, we've moved away from that which we can properly dispute, because you either accept my position or you don't.